Hey everyone, my name is Dave Nixon and welcome to another episode of the Peak and Flow podcast. I have the one and only Jamie Sangster on today, who is a dear friend, one of our facilitators, and an exceptionally knowledgeable man in the areas of, well, many areas. Many also like just rare areas as well.
Just a rare being.
He is. You're a blue steak, mate.
Yeah, it seems that I'm that rare that it's taken a while to get the call up, and I'm happy to be here.
Put me on, coach.
Yeah.
So Jamie's a really integral part of Peak and Flow from a facilitator standpoint as well as an educator standpoint. But also, you're an intern of mine. How many moons ago?
I think about 8 years ago now.
8 years.
Yeah. Yeah, it's been a long time.
It has indeed. Yeah. And it's been really beautiful to be able to share that journey with Jamie. But really today, and Jamie is not too dissimilar to me, where you can just talk and talk.
Yeah, so I'll try not to go off on too many tangents.
We probably, you and I both.
Yeah. So we'll see how long this goes for. We're going to put a limit on about half an hour.
Yeah.
And do our best to be able to cover our introduction to cold exposure and see where the conversation actually takes us as well.
Yeah, it's just making sure the purpose of this podcast is to really help give some frameworks and understanding around introduction to cold exposure, the whys, the hows, the whats, and how to really maximize that for each person. Now, in saying that, we also want to make sure it is concise so that someone can use it, take away from it. But this is still an intro to the intro to cold exposure.
Yeah.
And so given that, where do you want to start?
Let's start with, I guess, cold exposure now is a very popular, I guess you could almost call it a trend as such. And I have definitely had my fair share of river dips in the cold Kosciuszko mountain rivers and shared plenty of ice baths with lots of tribal drumming and having fun and yahooing, and it's a great time with friends, and had my cold showers and really encourage that amongst the community. But what I'm starting to discover now is like it's almost seen as like a fad, and seeing people approach this with absolutely no intention has brought some awareness to myself and also Dave.
And like it's actually understanding the depth of it right now. Cold exposure itself's not a fad, and I know you know this, but ice baths are.
Yeah.
Right, and I say that from like a social media standpoint, from the amount of businesses that are popping up, and nothing wrong with this. It's a pretty common trend within any sort of industry. Yet, really going, what's the reason, and why am I approaching this, and why am I even doing it? What are the physiological benefits? What could be the psychological benefits? What are the social benefits? What are the environmental benefits? And also, in looking at the benefit, look at the other side of the coin, and like, what are potential problems that we have in those areas as well?
I think I've also sat in far too many facilities now and had conversations with people that are there to have their ice baths because they've heard that it's good for their health or good for their mental health or physical, whatever that may be, whatever benefit they've associated with why they're going to that facility. And they have no way of approaching these baths. And for me, it's just insane to sit there and see someone go and jump into this 5-degree bath that has extreme potential to essentially build a bad relationship with something that could be so powerful to their health.
Not too dissimilar to somebody going to a gym for the first time and having a really poor experience. Or going to the beach and feeling judged or whatever the case might be, that deters them from doing something that can be exceptionally beneficial for their health. I think I just said health like you. Health.
With an F.
That's funny.
From the coast.
But it's looking at that, right? And a lot of the time it's because people might have an interest in it but don't really know where to start. And that's where, because this type of the science with cold exposure, but also the individual personal subjective benefits vary massively, and that's one of the challenges. They go, it's meant to be psychological benefits. It's like, sure, there is, but what role are you playing, and what do you have control over with those psychological benefits? It's not like you just get into the water and all like, oh fuck, everything's clear, I've got clarity now.
Yeah.
That there is a, like, what's your relationship with cold? What's your relationship with, discomfort? What's your intent?
Yeah.
What are the people around you? What kind of conversations are they having around this? Are we treating the cold like magic, as if it just happens to us?
Yeah.
There's more to it, and it's really today about making sure we can ground that sort of stuff.
Yeah.
So you can take away exactly a very simple approach, an integral approach to, actually, you can use this same approach cross-contextually. You can use it with training, you could use it with pickleball, you could use it with surfing, playing the piano, doesn't matter what it is, but really taking this integral approach to cold to get the most out of it now and long term.
Yeah, and I definitely think that, like, what you spoke to there also leads into seeing the cold as this therapy as such versus what we call deliberate exposure. And the difference is choosing to expose yourself to this stressful stimulus with intent versus seeing it as this action to take to heal yourself or have a therapeutic experience, because that would presuppose that you're going to get into that bath and actually have a therapeutic experience to hop out a different person and just receive all of these benefits. And it's like, that bath isn't just going to, like, when you hop out of it, that bath isn't just going to go, oh, here you go, like, you're happy, you're healed, all this kind of stuff.
It's also not something to fight, right?
Yeah.
So there was video shared recently of this, I think it was an ex-Olympian or, a high-level athlete when they were younger, and they were doing an ice bath in one of the portable ice baths at a gym or somewhere, and they did a voiceover of the 3 stages of an ice bath over 3 minutes.
Yeah.
And it was like, you first get in and it's, you freak out and you want to get out, but you have to fight through. And then, the second stage is, then there's this bliss after X period of time. And then at the end, it's this numbness. And it's like, hang on a sec. That may be your experience, but the volume of meaning that gets in, like, I don't have that experience whatsoever at all when I get into the ice bath.
Yeah.
Maybe was there times when I was, more, less experienced with it?
Yeah.
Possibly, but nowhere near to that same degree. And so we need to be careful in what we're communicating around cold exposure and training as well, because that's giving the person, in the same way it's like it's a therapeutic, like it's ice therapy or cold therapy. It's like, well, it's not therapy. People may have a therapeutic experience, but I can assure you there is, I don't know the numbers, but there will be a large volume of people that do not have a therapeutic experience, especially the first time they get in there, without any form of intent, any awareness of their relationship with the cold, any awareness of their relationship with discomfort, the anxiousness and nervousness and everything else associated with the ice bath before they get in. So they're going through it twice. They go through it before they get in and when they're actually in there.
Yeah, that's right.
And so that's not therapy at all.
Yeah.
So it's the kind of thing where how do we look at, when we talk about integral approach, it's going, well, what's my intention, right? What's my subjective awareness of my anxiousness or the meaning I've made about the cold or the meaning I've made about discomfort? What is the health of the community, of the culture that I'm also doing this with? What's the shared language? What's the shared meaning? What's the support like? And support, can be rah-rah, so to speak. And that's fine. In the same way, if you have a big workout with people, but everyone knows what they're doing. Everyone has their intention with the workout. It's really different, right? And you mentioned before around deliberate cold exposure, which fundamentally is what it's called. And the reason being is that it's because that's deliberate part is pointing to the person is choosing to get into the cold.
Yeah, absolutely. Opting in.
Yep. So there's an acceptance to it there, which is fundamental. And just exposing themselves to the stimulus of cold.
Correct.
And it's that simple. And it's like non-deliberate cold exposure. Well, that's going to happen from time to time. And being able to deal with that's going to be really powerful. But also, if we look at, I went for a deliberate 5-kilometer run this morning. And it's like, oh, okay, that's good. I went for a non-deliberate 5-kilometer run this morning. It's like your body has 2 different reactions. From a nervous system standpoint, meaning-making standpoint, you have 2 different reactions to deliberate run versus non-deliberate. Like, what was chasing you?
Yeah, correct.
And so there's fear associated with that. There's other, inverted commas, negative emotions. So it's going deliberate cold exposure. What is it? Why are we doing it? How do we get the most out of it?
Yeah, awesome.
And then also speaking, which I didn't touch on just then, but the physiological component. So your body, your breath, and then the environment itself as well.
Yeah, which is quite funny because that's often where, like, majority of the world now, and I guess even from a sales point of view, like, that's how you're going to sell from that objective, the objective benefits as such of like, okay, well, this is what's actually going to happen to your body throughout the ice bath, and this is how you should expect to feel when you get out of this, and this is what you can expect to get. And it's beyond that. It's beyond the bath is what I like to say. And if I've learned anything from constant cold exposure now for, I would say, the past 3 to 3.5 years, it's not about the bath. Like for me, the same as breathwork, it's absolutely an exposure for me to put a mirror in front of myself and see where am I at today. And how can I understand myself a little bit deeper throughout this experience? Yeah,
beautiful. Yeah. Let's go in a bit more depth of that in just a moment, because that's going to be the first part when it comes to like intention of that. Because I thought I'd just open my social media and see if I've got any advertisements as an example.
As you say that, my heart rate is starting to rise.
Yeah, right.
It just makes me anxious, this social media thing.
Right, okay. It makes you anxious, does it? So the first, I actually already just bought 2 of these, funny enough, but... that's probably why I'm advertising it. But the first one popped up. It's a Recover Ice Bath, free 3-in-1 combo today.
Yeah.
So this is advertising. This is normal. Purchase the Ice Bath today and receive the 3-in-1 combo for free. Great. I'm doing a little. This not sponsored, by the way.
Yeah.
But if you want to reach out, so 3 times boost in dopamine.
There you go. I measured that once.
Alleviate depression and anxiety.
Yeah, mine's gone.
It reduces pain and inflammation.
Yeah, I'm free.
Up to 60% increase in energy and focus. Improves mental health.
Yeah.
So this is the kind of thing where, like, that's just marketing. Like, that's and that's fine. I completely understand the game, but that's where it's like there's significantly more to it than. And I know most people would know that, but what does 3 times boost in dopamine mean? What does up to 60% increase in energy and focus?
Yeah.
So this is a small example of many other ways to look at promoting these things, but a lot of it is normally going, here are the physical benefits that we're measuring. Yeah. And then here's the magic, right? Yeah. Alleviate, right? Improves.
Yeah.
It's like there's plenty of people that have had a negative experience with cold exposure that they did not improve their mental health.
Yeah.
Right? It did not alleviate that whatsoever at all.
Yeah.
But let's talk through that stuff as we go through today.
Yeah, and I think what this actually does, like, I understand that marketing's got to do what marketing's got to do and they've got to sell a product, but it often oversteps and misses the point of actually meeting the person where they're at. Right?
And that's not totally, and that's nothing against that company and brand. I literally just bought 2 of there for our retreats.
Yeah, it would apply to anything.
Yeah. Cool. All right. Well, look, we mentioned around like taking an integral approach to this, and a lot of the time there is what's the questions that come up so commonly. What are the benefits? As in, what are the scientifically proven benefits?
Yep.
Which is always going to be looking at the object, not in it.
Yep. So things like your heart rate being able to decrease. You have like a mammalian dive reflex, which is going to be correlated to downregulation of the nervous system. More objective parts of, say, the body. What's actually physically happening within that body. You have upregulation of your, I guess, like the thermostat within the body. So the body temperature is going to rise. So your brown fat cells are going to increase, which means that it's going to increase fat burning afterwards. As far as why would you get an increase in creativity and focus? It's like, well, in that bath, you're going to have to learn how to breathe correctly, which means that you're going to oxygenate the brain more, which means that you're going to have more focus. So they're sort of like, there is an array of many different physiological benefits or objective benefits from that as well, which you can just continue and continue and continue.
And so the psychological benefits, and same with the physiological as well, right? Because we go, okay, how long should someone be in there for? It's like, well, who are we talking about? Yeah. What kind of bath are we referring to? Like, what are all the factors that feed into the variabilities? Somebody with a significantly higher body fat percentage may stay warmer than somebody with a lower body fat percentage, right? Chances are they are going to. And that's been my experience in facilitating it as well. That's neither here nor there. The person's at where they're at. Like it's going. Also, what temperature is the water? What's the vessel? Of the is it a cold shower? Like even the showers that we have here at the gym compared to the shower at my home's 2 kilometers away. in an older building. Like that's significantly colder. Yeah, absolutely. And then on top of that is a natural water source.
Yep.
Natural water source is going to be different as well.
Yep.
But here's some key things to consider with this. And this is the example I give so often, is that there's been days if you've trained enough, and it might be the same for other, it will be the same for other areas of life, but you trained enough and you're let's say that you've deadlifted for a period of time throughout your training career, and you come up to, and you comfortably deadlift, let's just say, it doesn't matter whether it's 60 kilograms or 100 kilograms, but it's a weight that you're comfortable deadlifting, and you're building up to it and you hit that number and you're like, that's really heavy today. And you look at it and you think, maybe that's not the right, no, that's 60 or that's 100. Oh man, that's heavy. It's not heavy. The weight is exactly the same. You mentioned before about it being a mirror, which we're going to talk to for sure when we get to the psychological benefits of it. But the weight is the same. What you're bringing to that movement that day is different.
Yeah.
And there's other days where you rock up and you do the exact same thing and you're like, is that 60 or 100? Whatever whatever your number is.
Yeah.
And you're like, man, that's really easy today. It's like, but why is it easy? That's just a mirror.
So many variables that go into that outside of this gym.
Yeah, absolutely. And so it's the same thing when we look at the cold. And we have a Dreamport ice bath here that's self filters, self chills. Well, not self. It's not.
No, it does have a little motor on the side of it.
Yeah, but what I'm getting is it's not a self-aware. it's just programmed.
Yeah.
As long as it's plugged in.
Yeah.
Anyway, point being is
it's sensitive.
Yeah, it is. Yeah. And so we set it at whatever degrees, usually around 6 or 7, so that it's manageable. It's cold enough. And that's going to be pretty consistent. There's going to be a pretty consistent temperature. Still body of water. Like whenever you get in, and some days are easier than others. The bath didn't change.
No.
And so if this is the beauty, and it's very similar to breath work. People commonly use, and I heard this from Brian McKenzie from Power Speed Endurance, now Shift Adapt. One of the biggest mistakes people make with breath work is they use it to change their state rather than to understand it. And the same can be said for cold exposure. It's a mirror.
Correct.
If the ice bath gives you anxiety, it doesn't. It can't. We didn't put any anxiety in it. That's the mirror of what's going on for you. Why are you anxious about this? And do you have any problems about being anxious about it? Because it's usually the problems that we have about anxiousness. So our anxiousness about anxiousness, or our shame about an anxiousness, that actually stops us from leaning into anxiousness, which is a common, normal part of our function of a nervous system and as a human experience.
And what I guess how I even found breathwork and cold exposure to start with, like I had such a great experience, and physically and mentally felt so clear, and let's use for lack of better words, free. And that was a foundation for building a poor relationship with breathwork and cold exposure. So I essentially started to use it to, as you said before, not to understand, but to actually change. I kept using this tool to be able to, I wouldn't have even seen it as a tool, but I kept using my breath to be able to change the state because I wasn't happy with where I was at. And I just kept addressing the symptom and not actually getting to the cause of being able to understand what's going on. Why am I feeling like this? I shouldn't need to constantly use my breath or the cold to be able to, like, yes, it's great to be able to regulate yourself, but why are you dysregulated?
Yeah. And that's a whole another conversation, right? But you're spot on. So a lot of, once again, through social media, it's like, here's how to regulate yourself, or here's how to know that you're dysregulated, or, here's how to soothe or self-soothe. Like, all these things are good, but they're dealing with the symptom. Why am I dysregulated in the first place? And so another word for dysregulation is my mind, body, emotional state contextually appropriate? Right? If I'm getting anxious about going to a supermarket, maybe that's not contextually appropriate for how I want to live my life. And so why am I dysregulated in that example? If I'm feeling anxiousness about feeling a little bit lost on a hike as the sun's going down, that might be contextually appropriate. But are you able to recognize that and regulate yourself to be able to get your bearings and make decisions that are clear rather than emotional out of fear and scared? Doesn't mean that, there's plenty of variables in both of those examples. Supermarket could be a few
Yeah.
variables, but definitely with both. So it's looking at dysregulation is going, my whole mind, body, emotional energy field is having a reaction to something.
Yeah.
Is it contextually appropriate?
Yeah.
Because anxiousness is a healthy function of our nervous system.
100%.
And it's the kind of thing where we are all here, we're successors of people that had a relatively, at some stage, healthy response with their nervous system, with having experienced anxiousness, to not go into a dark cave or to not, go into a threatening environment.
Yeah.
And so we are literally successors of people that have made those decisions based on anxiousness.
Yeah.
So it's a normal function of our nervous system.
Yeah.
The question is, once again, to reiterate, is it contextually appropriate?
Yep. And most of the time we're completely unconscious or unaware of, is it?
Yeah, or we blame something else outside of us without realizing. We're handing that power over without realizing.
Yeah.
So the ice bath gives me anxiety. It doesn't have any, mate. Like and that's not to say you're not experiencing it doesn't feel real, but it's like, so how are you making yourself anxious about this?
Yeah.
There's your question. That makes you more resourceful. Otherwise, I'm just at will to the ice bath.
Mm-hmm.
Heaven forbid I'm driving down the road and see the word.
Yeah.
Yeah, gave it to me again.
Yeah.
Now, I'm obviously playing with that.
Yeah.
But it doesn't have any anxiety in it. So rather than placing the power in the thing that's outside of you, hang a sec. I'm experiencing this on the inside.
Yeah.
Why is that triggering that for me on the inside?
Yeah. And that, I guess that leads into like us being able to deliberately choose it instead of...
Perfect, yeah.
We ran a little seminar yesterday, and the example I used was coming into a gym environment and becoming reliant on your coach to get you the results. And it's like, as long as you continue to hand over your power to that object, then you are no longer responsible for any actions you take. And you're allowing the power to be with someone or something else to get you the results that you want. And you're no longer choosing to be there, but expecting something from that in return.
Becomes codependent, right?
Yeah.
Something we've spoken to like time and time again, and it's just to reiterate again and again of like, there's 4 things in your power.
Yeah.
Your thoughts, feelings, that's both internal, and then speech and behavior, both external. That's it.
Yeah.
Like thoughts, feelings, that's your psychological approach. That's your intention. That's literally your self-awareness. People talk about, I'm pretty self-aware, but what they're referring to is actually their personality structures and behavior.
Yeah.
I know why I do that. Do you know what the positive intention behind why you do it is, though?
Yeah.
Right. That's different. And so it's the kind of thing there where as soon as we go, I couldn't have done this without X. And that doesn't mean that there's not an environment or a community or a culture that play a role in that, because that's fundamentally true.
Definitely. Yeah.
But when the power is handed over to it, without recognizing one's own role in it, and I did a podcast just the other day on anxiety. What is our role?
Yeah, and I've definitely had many experiences of taking my fair share of people through the baths now, and afterwards, what Dave just said then, I couldn't have done that without you. Like, and then the conversation goes straight into like, when are you available next? Then you can take me through your next ice bath. And for me, it's like, I'm going to flag that. That's not the relationship I want you to build with the bath. Like for us, it's being able to provide you some frameworks to be able to work with. And then as we deepen our experience of ourselves and become more aware and more in tune, it's like, how do we recognize that here's some data, and how does that actually match up with where we're at today, so we can move away from being reliant on the frameworks and start to meet ourselves where we're at, rather than having someone else take us there and achieve the results. Yeah,
and it's recognizing once again that there is both individual and collective, right? Individual and other, and they both exist, and they're both as important as each other. It's when one's valued over the other that's where we start to run into challenges, difficulties. So let's talk through the real main easy way. Yeah, you can keep that in, Cullen. That's fine.
This is good.
Yeah, it's fine. The 4 areas to consider and make sure you're across for really building a quality relationship, quality practice, and getting the psychological, but alleviating and improving those areas as well. So talking through that, let's start with intent. Start with the subjectivity.
So the feelings, your thoughts, and Sorry, there comes that F again.
Yeah.
Yep.
For effort.
Yep.
Continue.
I'll allow you to take the reins now.
Sure. Well, it's meaning making. What meaning have you made about
Yeah,
the
of course.
bath? What
Yeah.
meaning have you made about cold? What meaning have you made about discomfort? Are you aware of that? Right.
Yeah.
And so they're the things that's worth reflecting on when considering, because when we look at how we physiologically respond within our nervous system, from a nervous system standpoint, two people can experience the same thing but respond differently from a different area of the nervous system.
Yep.
Now, it's the same trigger, the same stimulus. What's different? And usually it's to do with the meaning that they've made with it. Same with the person that goes to the gym for the first time and goes, oh, the gym gives me anxiety.
Yeah.
And they slowly start to continue going. They lean into that, right?
Yeah.
They got sick of not going to the gym or sick of not feeling good or whatever the case might be.
Yeah.
And so all of a sudden, after 6 to 8 to 10 weeks of going to the gym no longer gives them anxiety.
Yeah.
The gym didn't change.
Yeah.
What changed on the inside to allow them to feel perfectly free with feeling safe in that space?
Yeah.
And so how do we become aware of that, and how do we bring that to now when dealing with something like cold exposure? And so what is your intention? What is your focus?
Yep.
I had asked this yesterday in the seminar that we ran. I was, each time before someone gets in, I was like, okay, do you know what you're focusing on?
Yep.
It's like trying not to fight. And okay, no worries. So if you're trying not to fight, what are you focusing on? Because if you're trying not to do that, what would you be doing?
Correct.
And then it's like, I guess I'm going to be focusing on my breath.
Yeah.
Okay, and so with your breath, what part of that are you specifically focusing on? A long exhale. That is very, very different to trying not to fight.
Yeah.
And so that's the kind of thing where when we're able to go, what's my intention? What am I going to focus on? Right? What have I accepted?
Yeah.
I've accepted that it's going to be cold.
Yeah.
That's why I'm here.
Yeah.
One of the reasons. And I've accepted that it's okay to feel anxious. In fact, recognizing it and letting myself feel it takes a lot of its power away, for lack of a better word.
Yeah.
So that's what we're looking at when we talk about intention, subjectivity, thoughts, feelings, meaning making. Otherwise, that's all disregarded. You need to get in for 3 minutes and just fight through.
Correct.
Like, whoa.
Yeah.
Yeah. And then that leads into what's the community and the social aspects as well.
Yeah.
And you've been around more groups doing this than I have.
Yeah.
But I've been to many different gyms and social events as well. But
Yeah.
what's your experience?
So my experience, this is not a sales pitch at all, but there is no one else that teaches it like we do, like our introduction to cold exposure. And that's from experiencing it worldwide now, with some of the best in the business that are very knowledgeable around cold exposure. I've had approaches of being very energetic, very motivated, essentially holding people's hands to keep them in that bath, telling them that they can do it, you've got this, and using drums to be able to take them out of their mind, and basically like into the moment, or try and get them into their body. I've then had very, very silent approaches out in nature, where it's like, this is your opportunity to just surrender to what is and be here and eventually fly away for the birds, or whatever your intent is at that time. And then I've had our experience where it's extremely powerful to stand in front of that bath and create intent and choose for yourself how you want that experience to look. And for me, it was really, really hard to move away from that motivational strategy. Because I was like, this just won't be as fun for other people. But that's me with my expectations of what I thought that it was meant to look like, right?
Yeah.
So that's my sort of like 3 different approaches that I've had to cold exposure. And by far, an intentional approach has been the most powerful and allowed me to get the most out of the ice bath. In regards to meeting myself where I'm at, understanding what's happening within my physiology and psychology on that day, and why is it that way?
Yeah. I recall, and I use this example a bit, the first night after our first retreat, where we had 4 people in our first retreat, 4 facilitators, one-on-ones.
Yeah.
And it was talking about cold exposure, and there was a bit of reservation, hesitation in the room. And I also said, look, you know, you don't have to get into the ice bath.
Yeah.
And I don't. This isn't any sort of reverse psychology or anything. It's like you don't. This is your weekend to make your decisions. So you don't have to get. Maybe your cold exposure is watching other people get into the ice bath, or maybe your cold exposure is having a cold shower, right? Whatever that may be for you. And then we caught up as the facilitators later that night, and one of the things you said is like, you know, they've come this far. You just they just fucking get in.
Yeah, there is no option.
Yeah, that's right. And I was like, well, 2 of those ladies actually lean into a fair amount of external authority.
Yeah.
And so if they are getting in, it's because I'm telling them rather than them choosing. I want to see the whole person here, not just the action or behavior of getting into the cold and the benefits that come from that. Because what we're actually doing, if these people lean into external authority and they only did it because we told them to do it, or that was the main part of it, then of course they get the physiological benefits from it, but they're actually reaffirming the psychological distortion that they need external authority to do things that are difficult.
Yeah.
And so that's the kind of component we'll be like, look, how do we facilitate a space for people to be able to make their own decisions, informed decisions, and to look, play, learn, which is one of the rules that we made up around learning and embodying.
Yeah. And that's, it's really powerful at our retreats, being able to see these, like given the frameworks for our cold exposure on the first morning. And then a couple of hours later, actually, after they've learnt a little deeper about the nervous system and understanding the breath to a deeper level as well, they then have the opportunity to have another ice bath. And the difference in the person and their choice, and seeing how they actually...
It's rapid.
Oh.
Rapid.
Yeah.
Yeah. It's not just being told or not just what we're doing, it's understanding why.
Yeah.
Right? And what's going on and what am I fully in control of here? And how do I lean into this discomfort? Not so that I just make everything comfortable, but to be okay with discomfort.
Yeah. Yeah. And where I've found myself to be is like, at the end of the day, for me, it doesn't really matter about the physiological benefits. Like, that's not my purpose of the ice bath anymore. I use it every single day as a morning routine to be able to state myself to move into my day.
Yep.
And then on a Sunday, I'll use it as a recovery method to be in the best physiological state for the weeks coming of training.
Yep.
Yeah.
Yeah. So in that case, let's lean on the last part of this, which is, you know, we've talked about intention, we've talked about culture, we've talked about the body.
Yep.
Let's look at breath, but also let's look at, and we're only going to be able to touch on this, we're going to have another one on it, I think.
Yeah.
But let's look at breath, and then more about the how-to rather than what's going on, and the frameworks with the introduction to cold exposure.
Yep.
And so one of the key things there with the frameworks is also looking at the environment. And so from the ice bath that we have here at the gym compared to the ice bath that I have at home, the Yeti Esky, massive Yeti Esky, it gets sun in spring, it doesn't get sun in winter.
Yeah.
It's cold. And then we look at, you know, actual natural water sources such as the Kangaroo Valley River that we use, or I'm going to Kiama next week. Like, hopefully the ocean's still nice and chilly.
Yeah.
So I'll be able to get into the ocean there as well.
Yeah.
They're all different experiences.
Yeah.
Right? It's like running on a treadmill, running on cement, running around Bondi to Coogee, running through the forest, hiking, going like sometimes it seems the same. It's not. They're all different and have variations. Yeah. So the environment does play a pretty significant role.
Huge in the stimulus of like what you actually have to take in, right? It's like in your own home, like where you have the Yeti ice bath, like that for you. Your home is I would like to think it's a safe place for you. At times,
I'd like to think too.
Yeah. In the gym, again, it's the same 5 degrees that you're going to have. However, that ice bath that we have down there doesn't actually have ice in it. It's just a body of water that's 5 degrees versus a body of water that has ice that's in an esky that's in your house versus going into nature that has a flowing stream, which then doesn't allow a thermal layer that starts to build around the body when you're in a still body of water.
Still.
That's then removed. So this water rushing by you at, let's say, 12 degrees, all of a sudden feels colder than an ice bath at 5 degrees.
Yep.
And then again, you have the nature and the stimulation of different noises, different temperatures, all that kind of stuff. So,
Yep. Yeah, and with usually if there's groups, people have to cycle through ice baths compared to a natural water source. Usually everyone gets in at the same time.
Yeah.
So there's different variations in that as well.
And I guess probably just a touch, because we haven't already, but like what do we use? Like which cold exposure should we use, and how should we use it? The key thing that we haven't touched on is, like, what is a stretch for you?
Yeah, spot on.
Yeah.
And so one of the key things to that is, to begin with, how do we reduce the volume of stimulus?
Yeah.
So still body of water.
Yeah.
Yeah, something that's comfortable, but what's the stretch is the question.
Yeah. So then we're not overstretching ourselves and essentially setting ourselves up for failure.
Yep. Overstimulation.
Yeah. And like, if that means today that you're in a body of water from your feet up to your knees, which is something we've both experienced with clients here in the gym, like, that's where you're at today, hey?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And continuously, I guess, building the practice to be able to lean into that a little more.
Yep. Absolutely. Yeah. Once again, another whole conversation in that as well.
Yep.
Which is great, but it's really pointing to, like, one of the key things we want to see there is, like, how do we manage stimulus per person?
Yeah.
Yeah. And so you start basic and build.
Yeah. Like, you don't walk into the gym and pick up the heaviest weight and expect to do it with fine form.
And it's also, the other thing is, otherwise people go to like a retreat or an event and they just all jump in the river and the lake or the ocean, because that's what everyone's doing.
Yeah.
And then when they go back to their reality, they actually can't maintain that, because they did it because it was maybe because it was a group of people doing it.
Yeah.
But then they come back and they don't have that natural water source. So how do I actually get into a still body of water like we have here at the gym and be like, this isn't the same. I don't like it. I can't.
Yeah.
And it's like all of a sudden now the cold exposure environment is controlling your decision making, as opposed to you going, how am I going to use this? It's now using you, because you're making the decision based upon what the environment is.
Yeah.
So, really important and powerful. And that's what I mean when I say there's more conversation to that, but really important.
Yeah. Yeah. And I think what we're starting to discover here is, like, it's just such a large conversation.
Yeah.
And why I said before, like, it's beyond the fucking bath.
Oh, yeah.
It's...
So I want to quote something there, and then we'll talk about the framework that we encourage breathing. But beyond the bath is also, and I mentioned it yesterday, from Tim Galway's book, The Inner Game of Tennis.
Yeah.
And use the word focus, flow, the zone, like interchangeable. I'm going to use the word focus. So he goes, you don't use focus to improve your tennis. You use tennis to improve your focus.
Yeah.
And what he's saying there is your access to that state of focus. So you don't use focus to improve your physical training. Use training to improve your access to that.
Yeah.
And same thing with the cold exposure. You don't use focus so you can do cold exposure better.
Yeah.
You use cold exposure so you know how to access that easier.
Yeah.
Yeah. Really key, important shift. So breath work. What are we focusing on?
For the breath, generally speaking now, I'm going to use general terms, and someone's general response to an ice bath, if they haven't been exposed to it before, would be like an anxious reaction, which means that they'd start to increase their breathing, and they'd start to breathe through the shoulders and the mouth, and that may say, if you can hear this on the audio, but it'd be like similar to a the hands might be on the outside of the bath, and it's like
shoulders are up,
a lot of tension within the body. So what we then need to focus on is bringing the breath to the nose, so being able to try and nasal breathe, and also extend the exhale. So first and most important, it's like becoming aware of what reaction do you have, and then choosing to start to match the breath where it's at.
Yep.
Where is it at right now? And how can I start to consciously extend my exhale, which means that that's going to start to downregulate me, slow my heart rate down. It's going to allow me to start to, I guess, tone the vagal, or increase vagal tone, which is downregulation.
Of our nervous system.
Yeah, correct. And they would be the two main key takeaways. Okay, so if you follow your breath and consciously take control of 10 breaths in and out, on the last 10th breath, you're going to hold on the exhale. So you exhale out, you've got empty lungs, and you're going to hold until you get a hunger for air. And the first hunger for air is actually going to be your psychological part. So your brain's going to tell you you're going to have to breathe, which is completely normal. But I want you to just push past that psychological barrier to get a physical sensation within the body. And that may be a little pulsation within the throat, or it may be some pulsation that comes from the stomach. And when you're ready, just go back to your natural breathing. From there, it's like a reassessment. Where am I at now? Like, how do I feel after those 10 breaths? And if you feel inclined, you can do another cycle. Okay. Generally, we find that 2 cycles of that would be around 3 minutes in the bath, right?
2 to 3, yeah, depending. If someone gets in there first,
yeah,
and it's quite quick and rapid, yeah. But what you said there as well, like, and we mentioned to people that let's go through 2 cycles,
yeah,
and then at the end of the second cycle, have a gentle inquiry or a polite inquiry into yourself, and be like, you know, now that I'm here, am I willing to do a third?
Yeah.
And if the answer is no, great, that's enough.
Yeah.
Out we get. If the answer is like, yeah, I'm willing to do a third, then off we go.
Yeah.
But you'll get more. What you get out of the third cycle, or fourth, or fifth, or sixth cycle, a cycle being 10 breaths and a breath hold.
Yeah.
You can't get what you get out of the sixth cycle in your first or your second.
Absolutely not.
And so it's just learning first to go, how am I using this ice bath today?
Yeah.
Rather than just blindly letting the data use me.
Yeah. Yeah. Perfect.
And so with that, that's and I probably will need to get you back on, get a call up again, to go through more around the actual breathing and the bit more in the depth of the breathing around it as well. But the basic framework is aim to shift down gears.
Correct.
From a mouth in, mouth out.
Yep.
Nasal in, mouth out, to nasal in, nasal out.
Yep.
And then the biggest hack, life hack, I've only got one, is hum. Yeah. And so if you're really, really struggling in there, is to hum.
Yep.
And in short, that's just massaging a big nerve
Yep.
that allows you to help to downregulate. And that's the soothing component to it as well.
Yeah, that's correct. Yeah. And definitely happy to share more about that on another podcast that touches more on the breathing side of things and how we can start to learn all of these different techniques to be able to regulate ourselves, whether it be up or down.
Beautiful.
Yeah.
And so to wrap that up, then it's like we've got intent, like what's my relationship with it? What meanings have I made about it? What's my intent for the cold today?
Yep.
And then the culture. So what's the community? What's the support? What are the conversations? What's the shared values? What's the shared meaning? What's the shared language?
Yep.
And then on top of that, the breath and the body, understanding that there will be a fight or flight response to begin with, and learning how to downregulate that using your breath and using the intention, hence why it's deliberate. And then of course, what's the frameworks in the environment as well?
Yeah, and
so
how's that?
Managing stimulus.
Yep. And that there is like an integral approach to cold exposure, and we start to see that there's no separation between cold exposure and life, or the gym and your life, or breathwork and your life. Like, it all starts to come together.
Yep.
Yep.
Yeah. And so moving on from that, team, thank you very much for tuning in. What we would recommend from here is, if you're interested, absolutely book an introduction to cold exposure with us if you're here in Canberra. If you're not here in Canberra, then we're also more than happy to actually host at other gyms as well.
Absolutely.
So if you're interested, reach out. We'd be more than happy to organise that with you. It would be lots of fun. And then otherwise, try these protocols yourself.
Yeah.
And develop your own practice.
Yeah. Let us know what comes up for you.
Yeah. Cool. Thanks, team. If you enjoy these podcasts, please share, like, whatever that people subscribe. Is that what I don't know. I don't usually say that. I'm going to sign off though. Everything you need to know is in the show notes. Until next time, peace and pizza. I'll see you soon.
Bye.